The time is now 8:55. Call the budget session of April 22nd, 2025 to order. We'll start with our financial health report with Director of Finance, Sandy Green. If you all, if you're speaking for the first time, just say your name and your title for the record, just so we know who's speaking. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandy Green, Finance Director for City of Salisbury. I think you may emailed the two reports that I'm going to go over. These are two reports that the previous finance director always went over. The first one is the financial overview. It's a short document that's only about 12 pages. And I'm just going to kind of go over this one briefly because this is pretty much a recap of our FY24 audit. So we went over a lot of this for the audit, and I'm just going to go over it briefly to kind of refresh everyone's memory. So if you go to the first page, which is the balance sheet for the governmental funds, the governmental funds are basically your general fund, your special revenue, your capital projects, and your debt service. And if you look, the main two things to point out on this slide is the things that are circled. Do you have those?
I went back here just a little bit.
It's the financial overview.
Sure.
Okay. So the items that are circled for FY24 and FY23, the two main things to point out on this slide are the cash and the unassigned fund balance. The cash for FY24 is pretty much remains the same at $19.6 million for FY24 and then $19.7 million for FY23, so that was pretty much unchanged. The unsigned fund balance is $16.3 million for FY24 and $14.8 million for FY23, so that went up a little bit. And when we get into like where our fund balance basically should be based on our target, you'll see like more that fund balance is actually in line with where we should be. If you remember from the audit on our general fund, we basically put $733,000 back into the fund balance for FY24, so we almost, this is pretty close to breaking even. And then if you go to the next slide, this is where when we're budgeting, you can see this was actually for FY24 when we did our budget, we had a use of surplus of $2.22 million, but then our revenue variances came in as favorable of $2 million, and our expenses were also favorable of $3.8 million. So even though when we first did the budget in FY24 and we were showing a use of surplus, we ended the year with a $733,000 increase to the fund balance, and that was just because of the variances that we had in revenue and expenses. And that was due to additional interest income, if you remember, from the revenue, and then vacancies with positions. So that was where the extra in expenses were. And then if you go to that slide, water sewer fund, if you look at the cash, our cash went down $2 million, but the restricted cash went up by a large amount, $3 million, and that's mainly due to the fact that I moved a lot of the cash into the investment account, which we have our money in MLGIP for, which is the Maryland Local Investment Pool for Governments, and the interest rate was high last year, so we earned a lot of interest income on some of the money that we had. The investment pool of the increase of the 5.8 $6 million is where we had the, bond sale at the end of FY '24, where we borrowed money for capital projects. So that's why there's an increase in the, investment pool, because that's the money that we borrowed for our capital projects. And if you go to the next slide, basically what I just want to point out here is, if you remember, when we went through the audit, I think there was a little bit of question on the water sewer fund, where there was an increase in the net position of almost $2 million. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that same number at the bottom, almost $2 million that we put into the, it was an increase to our water sewer fund, but don't really be fooled by that number, because if you go back to the previous slide, if you see on the left-hand column at the bottom, the negative $3 million, I'll go into that more on the financial health presentation, but that is our unrestricted fund balance in our water sewer fund, which is at a negative $3 million. We had an increase of the $2 million, but a lot of that went into our restricted money for capital projects. So our actual operating, what we use for our operating fund, with the water sewer, the unrestricted money that we have for operations is actually still negative. And it was, you can see the year before, it was a negative $1 million, and now it's gone to a negative $3 million. So, the financial position of the water sewer fund, we have more debt for the water sewer fund, and their debt is going up. And I'll show that more in the financial health report as well. If you go to the next slide. This is actually the combined net position of all of the funds, and just a reminder that this is an entity-wide statement, and it's the full accrual versus the modified accrual method, and this is where we recognize revenue and expenses as they're earned. And all of these are increases, but mainly the reason why all of these are increased is because this shows our pension liabilities, our bond proceeds, and our post-employment benefits like OPEB, all of that we actually have an actuary that does our estimate on our post-retirement benefits. So always entity-wide statements, we have an increase in our liabilities, you can see from the deferred pension contributions, and which is over $2 million increase from the year before.
Christine, how often do they do that scope of the pension? Does the actuary, do they do that?
They calculate it every year and do an entry for it.
Okay.
And the same thing, this is the net position of the governmental. This is just a combined of the water sewer and the general fund that you just saw. And the total net position overall went up to $3.7 million, which is a combination of the general fund and the water sewer fund. I don't think I need to go over anything on that. It's all the net position of the combined statements. If there's any questions on any of that. I just kind of wanted to briefly go over some of those points that we discussed during the audit. Before we move to the financial health one, which relates more to the budget. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. Do you have the next one? Okay, this one is the financial health presentation. And the first few slides are benchmarks that are recommended by GFOA. And then we'll go over some of the highlights for the FY26 budget. Okay, to the next slide. So this is the general fund balance that I was speaking of. And right now, our total general fund balance, for the unrestricted, fund balance for the general fund is $21 million, which is, the ratio for this is 41.7, which is a strong position to be in. And if you go to the next slide, this is an unassigned fund balance. And right now, GFOA, it's hard to see at the bottom, but the GFOA minimum is they like for you to keep 2 months worth of expenses in your unassigned general fund balance. The city minimum, we like to shoot for 3 months worth of expenses, but our target is 4 months. So you can see all the way to the right for FY24, the slide that we went over on our financial overview, where our fund balance was $14.8 million for FY24. That's kind of right in the middle of the city minimum and the target. The target would be $16.6 million, and the city minimum of 3 months is the 12.6, and we're at the 14, so we're kind of 14.8, so we're kind of right in the middle of where we like for our target unassigned fund balance to be. And then this is the debt to market ratio. This is your total debt and your market value of your assets, and this measures the level of risk associated with investing in municipal bonds. So you can see based on GFOA, this ratio is adequate at 3.10. Our general obligation debt for the general fund is $85 million. That went up a little bit from FY23, and that was due to the bond sale that we had with the projects that we borrowed money for the general fund and the water sewer fund. But we're still in the adequate range based on the market value of the property. This debt per capita relates to the previous slide as well. It's taking that same figure, the citywide general obligation debt, the same $85 million, and based on the population, the debt per capita, this is measures the debt burden per person basically. In Salisbury, so at $2,587, they recommend that it be below $1,000 to be strong, and adequate would be between $1,000 and $2,500. So we're pretty close to the minimum $2,500, but we're weak and it needs improvement. That one actually went down from the previous year, where we need improvement versus adequate for the previous year.
This is a question, or I guess for administration as well. I'm just, that number has kind of stayed stagnant of our population. Is that something that we've, had our eyes on?
I think that's based the census that they only do every so many years.
Right, but so, I don't think that trend's going up. Is it going? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, in the next census, are we going to see a favorable?
I think so. If as population is increasing, and so does our debt has been increasing, that number will be there. Using a census number, I think skews it a little bit in the opposite way. I'm not sure where we'd be able to pull a more true number.
Yeah.
I guess we could try to grab some of that information. It's not part of this presentation.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think when we do our the report that we have to send into the state, it specifically, like when it asks for the population, it says use census data. So it's like we can't technically change that number that we've reported.
Good to know, though. Thank you.
And then next slide, our annual debt service. This is actually the annual debt payment and interest payment for FY26. It's $4,486,244, and based on our general fund and capital project budget expenses of the $58.5 million, this is adequate at 7%. This shows what I was talking about on the financial overview slide, where our unrestricted fund balance for the water sewer fund is the negative $3 million. And based on the operating revenue of the 24 million, you can see that this one needs improvement, and it has needed improvement, but the percentage, it's kind of like fluctuates. And even the increase that we did last year with the water sewer rates, because we, borrowed money last year for water sewer projects. The majority of the money, the $2 million that we put back, basically is going to be used to pay debt service. So our unrestricted money that we have for operations has created more of a negative unrestricted fund balance.
Yeah, I think Randy Taylor, Mayor Salisbury, I think one of the things you're gonna see going forward this year in this budget and what's happened last year is that the per capita debt is gonna be driven almost wholly by water and sewer, and we don't know what 27 looks like. So even if our population is going up by 10%, and we stay stagnant, it only drops it by $100 a person.
Yeah.
That said, we have another 8 million coming on this year, and potential more for the future. That's the really all about PFAS and related stuff. So that's our real metric that we're going to be watching for.
And Ms. Grandin, I think you were here before, and you went away, but have we, and I know that funds with the water and sewer fund, revenue that's captured can only be used for certain expenditures. Have we explored other ways to seek revenue within water and sewer other than the increase of the water and sewer fund?
I know that Corey with their waterworks, she's always seeking like grants to help like with the projects. But as far as the operations of the water sewer fund, the main revenue is our water and sewer.
I'm just wondering if other municipalities are having this the same issue. I mean, it's if the municipalities can't increase the rates at an astronomical rate to the residents, but we're all experiencing the pipes are aging all over. We can't be the only municipality that's seeing this kind of needs improvement rate. So I'm wondering what other cities and counties are doing is my question.
I believe they're probably looking for grants as well. But from what I do understand, the grants are few and far between. And they're fighting, each state or each municipality is fighting for the funding.
Does the MDA offer any help? Going through everything, I wonder if the MDA offers any breaks anywhere. They have all these demands and requirements that fall on us, and we have to fund them. Do they offer any kind of give and take or help to minimize it? As Deshawn said, every city has to be dealing with it.
They are.
I think Andy can comment more, but I think that's our strategy is to get ahead of it, to look more prepared in light of our peers, so the event of the Fed or the state gives us grants or forgiveness or help, that we're in a position to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
On to the parking unrestricted net position. Actually, this one got a little bit better for FY. Why do I have that? Oh, no, I'm looking at the budget. Yeah, for FY '24, it improved. It was $509,000 was unrestricted net position, negative $500,000, and we went to the negative $336 for FY '24. And based on the revenue for FY '26 that we're budgeting, this still needs improvement too, but it has improved some from over last year. And then the benchmark summary, the general fund and unrestricted fund balance are still strong and adequate based on GFOA standards. The same with the debt to market value and the annual debt service. And then you see the three at the bottom still need improvement, the unrestricted net position for water sewer and the unrestricted net position for the parking fund. These are just some of the FY '26 budget highlights. I'm not gonna read through all of these because when we discuss with all of the departments. You'll see these, but these are the rates and fees that are being proposed. The trash service, we're proposing an increase from 71 to 77 per quarter. If you, there's some slides where we've done a comparison with some of the other municipalities with their trash rates and their water sewer rates that you'll see in the next few slides. There's no increase to the tax rates. The EMS service fee, that's gonna increase, but that's based on projections that our EMS provider does an analysis for us, and they recommend the rates for those increases. And then the departments, you'll see they'll go through with their rental fees and different things that are like listed on here.
Yeah, I know we'll go into it in more detail, but if just a short, where was the research, or was that with the attorneys, the short-term rental? I mean, those are some drastic decreases there. You were talking about going from 490 to 140 and from 970 to 270.
Yeah, when Muir's here, he's
short-term
got more of the details on that, so.
It was the penalty phase, that's the penalty phase, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that was, yeah. Yeah, but that's a little steep.
It was like, whew,
A little
yeah.
steep, a little steep.
Talking about,
That's what that was, yeah.
okay.
These are the recommended water sewer rates, an increase of 6%. The water sewer urban services will remain 1.5. Parking fund rates, the permit parking rates for lot 7, 13, 30, 33, 35 is increased by $5. Transient parking and parking garage, $10 per day. And then the stormwater fee, there's no change with that. The next slide is just the tax assessments over the years, where you can see the tax rate has remained the same for real property for the past 3 years. There'll be no increase for this year as well. Just a highlight of the general fund revenue, some of the top increases, even though there's no increase in the real estate tax rate, the assessment has gone up, so they're looking at an estimate of 1.8 million for the real property tax revenue. And as you can see, that's like one of our biggest increases for the general fund. The other one is the EMS from the county of the $1.5 million, where they're trying to get more in line with
Knock on wood.
where we should be with EMS. But I believe this is this like was this a one-time like catch-up? It's not.
It's a combination of, Andy Kitzer, our city administrator, it's a combination of both. But we're still working through the finer details of that. That $3.5 million does include what we'll call a catch-up payment of 1/3 of the outstanding $3 million that from previous services rendered in calendar year 24 and the first half of calendar year 25. So that number, the base rate is around 2.5 million plus some additional funding. So we still think that we'll have, it is short term, but there is still additional funding that is a catch-up payment.
And then some of the decreases, these were things that we had in the budget last year or this current year that are not going through. The fire service contribution from SU is a decrease of $193,000. The short-term rental is a decrease of $100,000. Our EMS Medicap gap reimbursement, we had budgeted $811,000 last year, but only 600, or actually I think it was 500, and between 500 and 600,000 actually came in, so we've decreased that to 600 for next year. And then, of course, the federal recovery funds, the ARP money, that we will no longer be receiving as a decrease of $1 million.
I have a question. Okay, so from my understanding, SU they didn't contribute to the fire service.
Correct. We had budgeted last year with the hopes that we were going to be able to negotiate with them. They have had just as much of a budget cut last year and even a more significant one this year. So we chose to not ask them for additional consideration in this year's budget where we thought we had landed last year. We ended up not going back and asking for it again. So it's a pure cut there.
What the short-term rental tax from HCDD?
So go ahead.
Can you just explain that?
Yes. Our plan last year was to hopefully stand up a short-term rental tax program in conjunction with the county. After further research, if the county is not doing a short-term rental tax, we can't independently as a municipality do one. So that program just is not able to move forward in its current state. So we remove that revenue source.
And the vacant building registration, that's,
I think that was a reduction in the fee last year when it was a significant vacant building registration fee. We slashed that in half, so I think that's what has made us
Okay.
reduce the revenue.
thank you.
Can I ask the question with the vacant building registration, because I'm really
Excuse me.
totally against vacant buildings. Why did we decrease it?
There was an argument at the legal level that you can only charge a fee sufficient enough that you can demonstrate cost against it. And at the time, I think it was basically we're just putting them on a registry and they're paying a fee. I mean, we don't charge that much for a rental, that and all the paperwork that goes along with it, let alone just somebody just signs up for. So it is still relatively high.
So what is the fee?
It's $200 a year.
For a vacant building?
Yeah, to register it.
Okay, to register it.
Yeah.
Okay, and
I think previously it was
there
higher
any-
than that, and it was an
four-
escalator,
was
and
it
it kept
four?
going up.
Yeah, it was
The longer-
four. It was four something before.
And I think the
pulling it
vacant building issue is it causes a lot of calls to the police department for crime. And so that's why that causes the generation of the fee to offset the cost of sending out police department. Also, at times, the city has to cut the grass, those kind of maintenance things for these vacant buildings.
A couple things. Go ahead. I think if you do the math, I think there's only like 150 some unregistered property, but as a percentage of the total housing stock, which is like 10,000, it's incremental, very small. That said, there's other tools in the toolbox to choose. If people are doing that kind of stuff, charges for calls for service, grass cutting, maintenance, fines for that stuff. So I think that the pure argument was, look, this is too much to charge just to put someone on a registry. It doesn't line up with the actual cost that the city's demonstrating. That was the argument. But it gets, again, it's relatively high still.
If it's something that when we review fee schedule and general discussions, we can go over this, if you want to go over it and look at the fees.
Yeah, I think if
We've
you
got
look at-
history of it, too.
If you look at cutting the grass just twice, you look at the manpower, the $200 doesn't even cover the cost of.
If
I
they
think-
pay that fee separately.
Yeah.
So-
Well, if they. Yeah.
If they, right, it would be
Yeah.
cleaner, it would be a cleaner lien.
I think but I think we can have that discussion later on in the fee schedule. Yes. Ms. Green, thank you.
Okay, next slide. These are the personnel highlights in the mayor's proposed budget. We have included a one-step increase and then an additional, what we're calling a half-step increase, which will be a one-step increase in July and then a one-step increase in January. Of course, this has not been agreed by the general government and the police or the fire unions as of yet, so we're still in negotiations with the unions. This is just what is has been proposed in the mayor's budget currently. It also includes career ladders, merit increases, and a health insurance increase by 9%. We're also still speaking with Care First with the health insurance increase because they've also proposed an 18% increase in health insurance, and currently we have 9% in the budget.
It's a variance.
A big one.
And if I may, I think 18% is rather conservative. And though we are trending in that capacity, I think us including an 18% increase, a 9% increase is, I think, around $600,000. So to add, another 6 on top of that, I can get the exact number for a potential increase. I'm not sure if that's where we want to be, so we're still working it out with Care First. We've never seen an increase like that since I've been here in a one year.
All insurance is
Every one of them. Every one of them.
Okay.
Did we see, like, claims, did you all look into?
Yeah, Meg, our HR director, met with Care First yesterday, and we got a summary of all the projections and where we were, and there's some conversations.
Okay.
When Meg's with us tomorrow morning, we can
Okay.
talk briefly about it, have general discussions. But it's not necessarily an increase in claims. What we are finding out is post-COVID, a lot of people had underlying or even chronic conditions that they did not go get reported. So we're just having more users who are actually going to see physicians, and then when they're going, they're actually having more comprehensive care taken. So it's a good thing, but it's also a costly thing. So the deferment and then just a more robust suite of healthcare options, I think, has made our premiums increase.
Okay.
Have we shopped any other insurances?
We're in a consortium with Wycomico County and the Board of Ed. So they actually would have to put out an RFP, and we'd have to do it together as a consortium.
Part of the conversation yesterday also was exploring opportunities to alleviate some of that burden to our budget. So they talked about higher copays potentially, or different costs for some medications. A way to potentially, that hasn't been settled upon, that was part of the conversation yesterday, but whether we are paying for it or whether people who are the users are going to foot some of that bill too. So nothing's been decided, but we are just looking at ways to stay around that 9%, not have to potentially move up to 12, hopefully not 18.
Next slide is some of the positions. We have 4 positions listed as new. Technically, the mayor position and the finance position are not new. The media specialist was formerly the zoo marketing and outreach manager position, which was eliminated. So we eliminated the one position and moved the media specialist, the new position, to the mayor's office. The finance, this is actually a frozen position, and I'll get more into that with my finance presentation. It's actually a frozen grant position that we would like to unfreeze and rename that position to something else that we can it could be more useful for our department. The 2 waterworks, maintenance supervisor and assistant superintendent, those 2 are new positions that they'll discuss more with the waterworks presentation. The frozen positions, HCDD has we still have a code compliance officer that's frozen, DID transportation manager frozen, and 10 police officer positions frozen. I know April just left, and I watched the presentation from last year, and I know there was some discussion with the police officer positions that are frozen. And we actually have 12 vacant police officer positions. So we have 2 that are funded and they're vacant. So if they trying to like explain this, we don't want to like fund like 12 positions when we still have 2 that are unfilled, because then they just have this extra money in the budget that's sitting there that we could use for other things. So, we can always go back and fund those if we fill the 2 vacant ones that we do have funded that are currently vacant, if that makes sense. And then these are just some reclassifications, positions that change names. Deputy city clerk changed from assistant city clerk.
And a lot of these had already happened in the fall. It's just since it's an annual budget presentation.
And culture manager to culture and events manager. What was the?
It's more events heavy than
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's tomato a little bit.
And this slide is showing our grant matches. Last year, if you recall, we had the $300,000 SAFER grant match, which now those positions are in the budget. So for the next budget year, we have $20,000, which is a transfer to the Ann Street Village. Some of the smaller police grant matches, which is on the next page, comes to $129,500, and then the $95,000 for community development. And these are basically like PAYGO cash money that comes out of our general fund that we have to fund. The next 2 slides are the general fund capital outlay. These are the projects that were presented in the CIP last week. And these numbers will, if you go back to your CIP package that was presented last week, the general fund and capital projects amount, the $5.6 million is what matches what we've brought forward in the budget from the CIP document. And the majority of the general capital projects are due to be funded with FY26 bond. There's only 2 projects, the $850,000 and the $75,000 for the street reconstruction and the concrete program that are funded out of PAYGO money.
Which we've agreed to call cash. We keep, I don't understand where that pay growth came from, but it's cash.
Cash.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it's those together. It's those 2 numbers together. Yeah. Yeah, and if you go to the next slide, it looks like it doesn't like add up, but it's actually the 4.7 million and the 925. The 5.6 million is just a total that carried forward, but it's the 925,000 and the 4.7 million added together that equal the 5.6 million.
I have a question. For the West Side Community Center, is that money for like infrastructure inside, improvements? What is, because the building is going to be donated, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so the arrangement is that we're working on negotiating now is that we would condominiumize it, so the city would own it, and we would maintain a two-entity condo. They would own the rest of it. They would own like 8%. End of the day, 350 is to capitalize it. So it's basically a shell, new roof and a shell. That's it. And it's concrete. So it'll be a relatively open use. So we're thinking that we can probably do it fairly economically, but we're trying to hone the use to figure out what will be built out in there. But that was sort of our budget. That was catch it.
Something.
thank you.
I missed something. So we're on the subject of the
At West Side Community.
West Side
Yeah.
Community Center.
page 22.
I just wanted to see what that money was going to be spent for. So it's basically to restructure it inside. Is that what you're saying?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what about like programming cost, or have we partnership with anybody, or how's that going to work?
President's brought that up, and we're talking to two different groups, but we want to wait and see for the whole thing to kind of flesh out, to see what the need's going to be and what the use is going to be to find the right partner. But I think we've got interest on the partnership side. So we're hoping to do the capital piece, pay the utility bill and some other miscellaneous expenses, and let the operational costs go to somebody else and let them run the program.
Is it basically, it's like the Church Street model?
Yep.
Okay.
A lot larger.
It's good size.
A lot larger.
And then the next slide is the water sewer capital projects. And this also equals the same number in the CIP document that was provided last week. These are the amounts, the 11.2 million that were approved. 1.5 million being the pay-go and bond over $9 million. You can see the biggest bond is the 8 million with the PFAS. And then we've got a few lease vehicles.
Actually, can I reverse for just a minute? I'm sorry. Under the general capital projects again, I'm sorry. Talk to me about the neighborhood infrastructure improvements.
And the Naylor Mill Road Bridge replacement too. I know that it's been a while since we discussed that, I think a long time ago, I believe, but yeah, talk to me about those two things.
Yeah, I think if we look through the footprint and we look at it, we've got something on the order of 180 lane miles of roadway. We've got a lot of deferred streets. So this will be an opportunity to have a one-time catch-up in addition to our annual contribution to fill in a lot of spaces where we've got people that call up, for example, that live on Cotton Patch that need a few lights replaced, and it's really not in the budget. And it's like, wait a minute now, these people are paying, meaningful taxes every year, and we can't replace them. It's just, so we just need to kind of plug a bunch of holes throughout the city, at least as a big shot in the arm. And I don't really think $1 million's enough. I thought $1 million was a respectable amount in addition to our current budget, but I think gets us down the road, and we'll work it from there.
Is it just for repairs and things like that?
Well, it's for repaving streets, and it's for lights. It's for, it can be used for both. In other words, it can be used for lights, for street replacement rather, yeah.
Well, I hear about Cotton Patch. Can I ask you about Shiloh Street they just need a speed limit sign?
Yeah,
Be nice, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just some of the,
We can move that $1 million up if you need something.
we could do that, but I just want to make sure it's for citywide, and we look at how we prioritizing importance, and making sure that every neighborhood gets looked at.
Well,
Something like that with Shiloh, we can do
I
right
think
away.
that from what I could see, because I ride through all the districts for real, and I'm seeing a fair share of work being done in each district. It may not be where you want it to be, but I see where it is being implemented in a lot of places. I know in my district, I've had a few streets done, and then I noticed in year two. Year two.
I don't think, where'd you notice it too?
I'm not talking, I'm just saying year two. So I've noticed in different areas where it has been done in other districts. And if it's not being done, I'm sure it's being implemented to be done, because I'm just, it's been a while, just like Naylor Mill Road, I know that's part of my district. But there's massive work that needs to be done there, because that is a thoroughway. It's a thoroughway. It's that area is constantly busy, and they have holes, trenches, and then there's a lot of truck work done. And even on Delaware Avenue, West Main Street, that was done. And only thing I'm looking for now is no trucks to come through over a certain axle, because that's how that road got really in disrepair, because of the big tractor trailers coming through the area, and there's no way for them to even come through there, and that's a residential neighborhood. But other than that, I think we're all gonna be treated fairly. I really do, not just saying that to be saying it, but I think that some of the work that the mayor has done has been really fair thus far. As far as doing the roads and stuff, I can say that.
How are we, I did want to ask how we are identifying them. Are we using like the citizen reporter? Are these areas that people have flagged for us, or if they are areas that, I'm just curious as to how we're identifying.
So Andy can jump in here. He's got a little more history with this, but GIS has done a complete, roadway, and we've graded these streets, and then the matrix also switches to where main thoroughfare snow routes, where condition and use is kind of a combination. So, so again, it would be beautiful if we could spend $4 or $5 million and just go through the city and do it, but and hopefully over time, as we keep adding a couple $100,000 a year to the capital budget for that purpose, we'll get there. But we've got to train our budget, but this will be a good catch up. So
Specifically for roads, we do have a road repaving schedule that exists that we're behind on from the last couple of years. That's the primary use of some of this funding. We've also been, whether it's citizen reporter or some additional conversations we've had with the public on some of the needs that they're identifying within their neighborhoods, or what you all bring forward. I don't think the list is concrete and exactly what is going to be funded with it, but we know that it is in excess of $1 million to do everything, as the mayor mentioned. So if it's approved, we will then probably prioritize that amount and then get them in order and then start figuring out how we're going to knock it out.
I like the idea of hitting the snow routes.
Could you send us that list?
Yes.
the old list,
Or what-
About spring
is that-
chase, is that on that list?
Is that where you're,
spring chase is in the conversation for sure.
In your area, I can't remember.
is that what we're, like, gonna use to kind of start? Is it that list, is that what you used for the $1 million? Is that, did you use that baseline, the list that you're talking about, the old list?
Yeah.
Or the GIS list?
Yeah, the GIS, I think, and we've had field ops go out and do a field
Okay.
survey of stuff, and so we can get you a list, let's put it that way.
So we have until tomorrow to make this, but can you send us something that we can, because we're getting, the news came to us and we just don't have anything to give to folks to tell them, hey, you're number 46 or we don't know. And I know you all don't know, but we gotta, if we're gonna put $1 million into this, we need to have some sort of reasonable effort to say.
I may be even able to pull it up and help you walk through
That would be
what our
great.
thinking is. I just need to make sure I can, it's a live feed,
Sure.
GIS library.
And then my other
Making notes of
question,
it.
I know that, so we discussed it, but infrastructure can be interpreted quite a few ways. Should we change the name of that to make sure that it hits, streets, roads, sidewalks, lights, whatever the intended use is? I want to make sure that it doesn't filter over to anything else if this is the intended use. So should we change the name of this to make sure that it gets directed to what we all intend it to be used for? Since we did see that.
Infrastructure. Isn't that a part of infrastructure?
So typically, whenever we bond something, in the details of that, we'll say what it's, the finer points, it'll say, so like in our master plans, we'll say this is what it's going to go toward. We can either list it out in kind of in that finer detail summary, or change the name. Either way. We can
That
do
would make
both
me
ways.
feel better. I'm just, if
Okay.
you look back to
Yeah.
last year, infrastructure, we all looked into
Infrastructure,
Webster's and
yeah, yeah.
Oxford and everything else just to get the definition of that word.
Okay.
And $1 million, and we're having people call about streets, roads, and lights. We don't want to get into we fixed this with the
Or
funds and
something. Yeah,
exactly,
right,
or
got it.
remove the funds over here. I just don't want to have that to be a case.
We can,
I think
Yes.
we're trying to be a little less,
That jammed us up before. That jammed us up.
well, yeah, like a little less detail, only for the fact that when we bond money,
Yeah.
and if we're real specific, like to use an example, like say you bond so much for Shoemaker Pond.
Sure.
And then you can only use it for Shoemaker Pond. So if you say ponds, we
yeah,
have to have Lindsay Raid or bond counsel do
That is-
a reallocation of the bond proceeds if we use it for
Yeah.
something that's still a pond, but we didn't specifically say, like, another pond.
I think we can say streets, sidewalks, street lights. I think we're okay to do that. We won't name it specific streets.
Yeah.
But we can probably hit those buckets.
Sure.
That's
fine with me. I prefer to go, but we got into that before about, we were trying to make it so that it was general, but then it was, well, why didn't you go specific, City of Salisbury? And then, so I'm just kind of bringing that back up to say, hey, this is opportunity for us to kind of hone in on what the need is, while being, kind of cautious of the funds being used for just a little bit more than what they should be used for. I don't want us to get into a situation where we should have.
And I don't think we should give them a number of where they're at, because something may happen and they
Not
get
that,
pushed
but
back.
right now, we don't have anything. And so I think, and we've been,
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
you're
I think
saying-
there's-
you can tell them they're number 45,
Well-
but it being a number, I wouldn't want to tell them a number.
that was
You're on
just,
the
I was being
list. Yeah,
facetious.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
You're on the list.
I think there's some things on the list right now that probably don't belong there in my mind. But so we're going to have to reprioritize that, and then so. One thing I wanted to touch on, and probably you haven't talked about, was the AZA. What we're trying to do there in the zoo is that we're hoping to. It's a long desired asset in the city was to have a children's museum or a learning center, sort of. And so the idea there is to try and renovate the existing, what I consider to be a dated education center in the zoo, and then combine that with sort of a living kind of a learning center, children's museum, and again partner with a private group. We would run it. We would have a partner on the which we have an existing entity that's interested in that, as you probably know. That would be a kind of a new thing for the city. I think that'd be a thing where it'd be a real draw, where we'd have opportunity to do real live demonstrative animals, and we could have museum-like stuff with turtles and tanks and that kind of thing that's sort of live. And so it's sort of zoo-based, animal-based, but at the same time ecological, environmental, children's museums. I think it's a really neat combination that I think would be a big draw for the city and the zoo. I mean.
I absolutely adore that. That is,
Okay.
Virginia has one. No, so yes, I love it.
Okay.
Now, how do we combat, we've heard it before with different administrations before us, pet projects. I'm all for it. I would think this would be amazing. How do we combat people saying that this is a pet project? This Westside Community Center, those kind, like how do we combat, or how do we say and meet people to say, no, this is a need for us as a city to bond out to increase the the budget by $850,000 to say these are needs for us and not pet projects, because I'll fight all day long for children education and those kind of things, but someone else who may not have children or who contributes to our tax base, they may say that's a pet. Why are we putting funding into my water and trash rates increased by 9%, 6%, but you all built a children education museum there.
Yeah. Well, it's like you can't clean your house and not cut your grass. You know what I mean? It's like you gotta do a little bit of both. And so I think we got to show the priorities. And I think it's a reflection of our values. We're investing in youth, in the zoo, and I think we'll get a partner on this that'll help us dramatically to finish this out. $500,000 not going to do it, but certainly we could. And I think it'll be a real plus for the zoo. I think it'll become a neat asset for the zoo.
We had a partner to come for, I'm sorry.
I think both of the projects are very good projects, because something that we haven't done, and we've had community centers on Troy Street and on Newton Street, but my thing is we need to invest more into our youth and our children, because that is our concern and that is our future. It is our now. So if we don't groom our children and our youth to be successful, or have places for them to be entertained or have fun, then we're going to lose our kids to the street. And I can't see losing any more of our kids to the street. We need to do things to help our youth. And if a person who is paying a little bit more taxes for this or that, if that's not a concern to them just because they don't have kids, then it's a serious problem with me. I think that we should I know there are things that need to be done, and I would love to see them get done. But these are some projects that I would also, and I would hope that the council would love to see get done, because it is a need. It's a need.
The other piece
Councilman Blake.
of that too is if you want to increase the population in Salisbury, you want people to come to Salisbury, on everything that relates to the tourism, the zoo is there. And when they come and they see the zoo and they think, oh, to me, if they come and they go, wow, then they spread the word, more people hopefully move here, we have young families, and that's, as Councilwoman Jackson said, that is our future. So we need to invest in something instead of Band-Aiding. The zoo came to us needing $50,000, extra this past year. And so I think if we put some type of a priority with the zoo and earmark it for children, that's a win-win.
Have we had someone come forward as a partner for the museum?
Yeah, I would make the case that the existing foundation is a huge partner already. That said, in addition to that, there's a former superintendent for Fairfax County, which is a big children's museum advocate. He's been over and met with me 3 different times, and they're heavy hitters. They're serious. And so I suspect that once we will get in a position to be able to launch something like this, I think the money would flow to help complete it. One of the things I think this thing would also do was it potentially could make it a revenue producer, meaning people pay $5 to get into the Learning Center, which is something we've desperately wanted for the zoo generally. So I think it could be a very attractive and productive thing for us all. So
Nice. Thank you.
Also budgeted in the schedule today and tomorrow are general discussion options. So if we want to drill down on any of these things.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. We talked about the water and sewer capital projects. This is just a recap of the debt for water sewer, $4.4 million for next year for our debt service, principal and interest payments. That's adding the $287,000 for what we have in for the projects for the bond for 2026, and it's also got the 24 in from the previous year. I think a couple of things came off of the debt service for water sewer, so the net is close to $200,000 increase difference in the our payments for FY26. Just real quick on the next slide. This is just when we're developing the CIP pilot or plan. We have to keep in mind that our maximum debt service per our fiscal policy is 10%, and this is kind of just like the spreadsheet. These aren't the exact numbers that we ended up at, because this is just an example to show like when we were first structuring this and we made some changes. Our for FY26, our ending debt was 4.5, and based on our expenses of $58 million, the 10%, our maximum debt is $5.8 million. So we had a capacity of just a little over $1 million that we could finance to stay in line with our maximum debt limit, which I think we were like close to our maximum when we finished. This is a slide I know that Keith used to like to show every year. The increase over from FY12 to FY26. It just shows where our tax levy has gone from 20.4 million to 34.5 million, and at the same, which is a $14.1 million increase, and during the same time period, our public safety department has gone up $28 million or $17 million. So that it is the majority of the increase compared to the $28 million for the other departments and our debt service over the years.
26.
This is where we did our survey for the trash fee increase. I wanted to point out on a previous slide, we didn't change the $71. It said it was increasing from 71 to 77, but last year it went from 71 to 73, and then FY26 we're proposing 73 to 77, which is a $5% increase, $4. And you can see the quarterly trash compared to the other municipalities. Worcester County is higher, Easton is higher, Rockville and Annapolis is higher.
Just real quick, if I may, on this piece, people have asked, why did the trash fees go up? This additional revenue is about $98,000. It is in direct response to the increased fees of tipping fees that the county has passed on last past year. So this is to just get us caught up to what additional fees happen in this current fiscal year. They are also proposing additional fee increases beyond what the current rates are. So if that ends up getting adopted, we may have to look at this again. But it's about $90,000 when they move from $67 to $76 per a ton, and they're proposing going from 76 to anywhere up to 88 or up to $100 per ton, which would have significant impacts on our general fund, which may be translated into considerations for an additional trash fee. So this is in direct response to tipping fees increases.
In relative terms to a private vendor, it's still a really good deal, but it's going up. That's just the reality.
Next slide is where we monitor our revolving and our water and sewer impact funds. We like to keep a minimum balance in all three of these, 1.5 million in the revolving, 500,000 in each of the impact water and sewer funds. And if you recall, we just passed an ordinance for $800,000 where we were using some of the available money that we had in these funds for a project that Corey had on the last council meeting. This is another slide comparing the water and sewer rates to some of the other municipalities. And as you can see on this slide, the Salisbury, even with the increase, is still in line and lower than a lot of the other municipalities. Worcester County, Cambridge, Easton, Rockville, Annapolis.
So this is.
And these are current rates that we just.
I was going to ask
We
you.
just did this year.
Okay. And this is enlightening, and again, another task for our new, potentially for our new communications director that I mentioned yesterday in our meeting. I think, again, phrasing this some kind of way, not my background, but for some way of just sharing, where we are compared to our, our neighbors, this would be good. Make it not fun, but make it informative, but make it kind of like, not just a chart, but just say, hey, listen, compared to our neighbors, our surrounding neighbors, we're either meeting the mark or actually a little bit less. So, because, when you get that 6%, you want to, but we're still at least, meeting or we're lower. So I think that would be really, really good. It would be helpful if we could get that out, fairly soon once if we do, as council, choose to adopt that increase that you all proposed.
Joanda can probably explain a little bit more. Because it was actually, it's hard to compare some of the rates because it's not comparing like apples to apples because they have different like minimums for their gallons and we had
Some people do water and sewer. Some people do, some people do county, some people do city, and so it's hard. It is difficult. But with some people couple it together. Absolutely. Yeah, yes, it is. Well, thank you for doing that work. That would be good. Thank you. Yeah.
The next slide, I believe, this was going over last year where we negotiated the terms with the MDA and we were going to be overlapping with two of our debt payments. The 2015 water quality bond was going to overlap with the 2008 for 26 and 27 and 28. Well, no, for 27. No, which ones we're going to overlap, 27 and 28, and we negotiated terms with them. It would have been doubled over $5 million, but in 29, when the 2.2 million comes off, that's when our current water sewer, where we're only paying $150,000, it's going to go up to the $3.6 million. So we're still going to have to come up with a little bit of a difference in those payments, but it's not going to overlap and double like it was going to in 27 and 28. But we're still going to go from 2.2 to about 3.6. So the payments are still going to be over $1 million more in 29.
$1 million among friends.
Right. Just to go back to the last comment you made about having, a communications rhythm, something. Our new communications director, sitting right back there, Victoria, so she is taking copious notes on some of these requests.
Thank you, yes.
All right, getting to the end, just some of the takeaway strengths, our financial position, based on our FY24 audit, we're still in good shape with our fund balance, our unassigned fund balance for the general fund. Water sewer projects, I believe previously it was discussed that in the past, we've always been able to fund our water sewer projects, but now we're getting to the point where we're not able to use PAYGO money to fund our water sewer projects. And then some of the weaknesses, again, the general fund CIP, just if the CIP continues to pile up, it's equivalent to unfunded liabilities. And our general fund revenues, we can count on rising expenses, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of revenues that are increasing to fund those. As you saw, medical costs are going up. They're expected to go up 6 to 8% per year, but they seem to be going up more than that. And the predictable pay plan that we have every year is becoming increasingly difficult to match the rising costs, to find the revenues to match these costs. Every year we talk about the fire services and the tax differential, and then the parking fund needing to increase the unrestricted net position, which that got a little better over the past year.
On a couple of things, on the fire service agreement, the council's basically in the dark. I'd like to know where we're at on that, our current status, and also in one of our past meetings, I think Andy talked about us meeting. You were going to reach out to the county to see if we can meet in regards to the tax differential. That we keep talking about that. I just want to know what our action plans are for that.
It's been my sense that there's no interest on the county side to do anything, nor the legislative side to do anything on a differential. So to talk about us being hopeful, I think, would be disingenuous. I think we have other angles with which we could make a better deal quicker with the county, one of which is the disparity grant. Second of which, to your point about the fire service agreement.
That one, the disparity grant.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, and the cannabis, but yes, that's a good one, the disparity grant.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting $12 to $15 million a year. I'm not sure what it's going to be this year.
Got $3 more million this past year. Yeah.
Okay. And and it's done for purposes of kids that are below the poverty line. I mean, there's a percentage of the kids that live in the city, which are already paying county taxes. So that said, and I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it, but we're going to be on the sunny side of where we were relative to the FSA, but fire service agreement. But we've actually in recent days, which I just sent you a memo yesterday, we're going to possibly renegotiate that to even have I think a more representative, fair deal for the city, which would mean hopefully increased money. So we'll see how that goes. So we're gonna move forward with that. We want to be good partners, but at the same time, I feel like we've been continuously taking advantage in that department. We're gonna try and correct that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I understand that they may not have an interest in the tax differential, and I do understand we need to get more in the disparity grant. But the citizens also, each resident is paying county taxes that we don't get services for. It will matter to the residents.
Oh, yeah.
Because we are only one of 2 counties in the whole state. Kent County is going through this. That's in Chestertown, is the county seat. So I don't know. I mean, we can't do nothing right this minute, but I do think as much as the fire service contract is important, and it is, we got to make a move somewhere on the differential too, plus the disparity grant. People want a tax break. People are saying it's too expensive to live in Salisbury.
No, agreed.
Well, the part of that, the big reason is because we're being double dipped. And we're getting county and city taxes. The county does not come fix our roads.
You're right.
They don't come take care of our water. They don't come, and we know they don't come with their fire trucks. So we are definitely being double dipped. So they may not have an interest, but the city residents and constituents do. So I just want to keep that in mind as we move forward.
So, yeah, to make a final, to your point about Kent County, the mayor up there is a very big advocate of it, of a differential. Here's the issue, though. In its current application, a tax differential would actually come through in the form of a tax credit to the taxpayer. So it doesn't actually come to the city in the way of additional funds that we can use for assets or operations. So that's where I say, yeah, which would be fine too. At the end of the day, we still need more money to run the government. And I think there's room for that as well. But to the president's point, I think the issue with regard to the differential, I think, is impact to his top line, which is helpful. But yeah, either way, I mean, it's challenging if you can't get the legislators that would do it to do it. We're kind of stuck. So I would prefer to take a different tact and make the case, but that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions from council? No? Any other final thoughts?
I'll reserve them for a general discussion
Okay.
later on.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Ms. Green, and thank you, Ms. Rishi.
I'm going to flip over to my computer. I've got Rob up here. He's going to do some of his presentation via Zoom, and then there may be some additional gentlemen who are joining him.
He's laying on the beach in Florida.
I was going to say, where's...
Thank you, Sandy.
Yes.
It's you and your department. This is amazing.
Yes, thank you.
Andy, do you want me to see if they're in the hallway?
Yeah,